And I got one of these coolers from Walmart. You can put ice and water in there to last for days. I really like it. If I forget it and leave it in my car, I'll go back out. It's still ice.
Okay, Mr. Thigeson, this is a question that we as a group have prepared for you, just so we'll kind of get comfortable asking questions.
Okay.
It is, as us being a group of students that in the future plan on seeking legal careers, what advice do you have for us?
No wonder you stood up when I came in. You guys are good. What advice do I have? I had 3 children, 2 of whom went to AR here. You didn't have this building when my kids went here, but read, 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 read. That's the best advice. Reading gives you ideas. It gives you the words to put ideas into some kind of format, some kind of practice, some kind of reality. And if you read, is it okay if I use words like panoply?
Sure, why not?
Okay. And if you read a panoply, that is a wide spectrum of stuff. It all helps. Have you read To Kill a Mockingbird yet?
I've read part of it with, I believe it had something to do with Abraham Lincoln.
No.
Oh,
No. It's a small country lawyer in the South in like the 1930s. And he's a trial lawyer, and he gets a case that nobody else wants to take. There's also a movie, To Kill a Mockingbird. I recommend the movie, but the book is so much better. Because I did it backwards. I saw the movie first, and then I read the book, and I went, this book is so much better than the movie. So read widely and learn English. Take all the English classes you can take. Reading and writing are more important than the ability to argue or hold your ground as a lawyer.
thank you. Now, back to the case. If Judge Ferguson was still alive, what questions would you have for him and why?
Boy, you really submarined me on the first question, didn't you? My goodness. What questions would I have for Judge Ferguson? Well, you've obviously read the case, then you know that Plessy was suing Judge Ferguson actually for interpreting and enforcing the law in Louisiana. I wouldn't ask him right off, have you read the 13th and 14th Amendment? I think I would ask him if he thought that the treatment of Mr. Plessy was so, and I'm trying to boil this down. See, I want to use the word disparate, but different. If the treatment was so different of Plessy on the railroad cars and by virtue of the statute that he thought he created for Plessy a second-class citizenship, which is the real issue of the case, really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you think Homer Plessy influenced Rosa Parks by any way?
Oh, good question. I don't think that Homer Plessy had a direct influence in the way we might think of it now. the Plessy case started, the law was passed, and by the way, here's a great thing for you guys right now. Don't be laughing at me, man. And right now, our legislature is in session. I saw one of our legislators less than 2 hours ago. I just bumped into him in a restaurant, and I said, and he always comes to me. I've known him his whole life. I've known him since before he was going to this school right here. And I said, I started talking to him about different bills that were coming up. And he asked me, because I told him, when you get elected, if you've got a question about judges or some particular law, call me and I'll try to help you out. I don't know everything. I don't, please. Of course, you talk to people who know me well, they'll say, yeah, he really doesn't know very much. But the legislature, the reason that's relevant, they're making laws right now. I mean, from February through May, they're making laws every year. And we got to try to keep up with what they're doing. Because just about the time I learned some law real well, they change it. And I've got to learn it anew. So in 1890, they passed the law that Plessy was fighting against 2 years later. And, you know, he agreed to be the person to do what he did. A local group asked him, would you be the person who could go be a test case for us? And he agreed. So he purposely, you know, got arrested for violating the law.
Oh, so that's why it's different than Rosa Parks, because she didn't purposely get arrested.
Well, but Plessy, she didn't agree to be a test case. Mm-hmm. She just got on the bus and sat someplace she wasn't supposed to sit. According to Plessy versus Ferguson, really, they said it was okay to have separate but equal accommodations. And I'm not sure Rosa Parks knew who Homer Plessy was, but the whole concept was certainly there for her. Does my answer make sense?
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes my wife says, God, you take so long to get to your point. I'm trying not to do that. But,
no, you're fine.
But sometimes you have to understand the background in order to understand how you get there. So.
Thanks.
How would you defend yourself if you were Homer Plessy?
His basic attack or defense, and please understand that the 13th and 14th Amendments to the federal Constitution was what he was hanging his hat on, what he was basing everything on. And the 13th Amendment does what? Do we know?
It basically establishes equal rights.
It abolishes slavery. And the 14th Amendment does what? It gives rights back to the states. We have a two-tier system, a federal and state system. And the federal is on top of the state system. And he basically said, if I'm a citizen of the United States, you're violating the 14th Amendment to your own Constitution by treating me the way you're treating me. And frankly, the way people have thought and the way civilization has come about is things change. We learn new things all the time. So the opinion in Plessy versus Ferguson was a product of the times when it happened. One of the judges, Justice Harlan, gave a dissenting opinion. And his opinion in 1896 is what we've come around to in 1954 with Brown versus Board of Education, which basically did away with Plessy. Is that an answer?
Yes. Do you agree with the ruling of the case and why?
Well, no.
Neither do we.
Yeah.
Well, but keep in mind what I just said, really the ruling was a product of the time in which it existed. They had just said, you states, you can make laws. And as long as it goes along with our Constitution, it's okay. And the state legislature in 1890 made the law, and I forget the name of the group that asked Plessy to be the guinea pig. But they said, that law's not right, we need to have somebody test this.
Since that was like a product of the time, like being in today's time, when people try to get their point across, it's like more violence. So like what other ways do you think we could get the point across?
The only way that I see, and I've been doing this for longer than you guys have been alive, so, and maybe I've gotten put blinders on and I can't see solutions out here, but the only way to do it is the way Plessy did it. Go to court. And I mean, we've seen in the last week, I don't know how much you guys pay attention to the news, but the president had an executive order and the court said, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Thank goodness we have courts. Thank goodness we have the Constitution that we have that says courts get to say what's constitutional and what's not.
Okay. What would you do if you were in Judge Ferguson's place?
Ew, I don't like that question. Because frankly, please understand that Ferguson was the state judge. And his decision, wound up being appealed to the United States Supreme Court, right? That's your understanding? That's mine. If I was Judge Ferguson, I probably would. You may not like this answer. I probably would have done the same thing he did because that's what the state legislature said the law was.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to think that I'm courageous and different than other people, but I have to look at the law and say, this is what it means.
So then, like back then, comparing the law to like the 13th and 14th amendments, like what would be like your thoughts on it?
We had just gone through a civil war. The Civil War ended in 1865. This is just 25 years later. And I don't know if you guys can see this. What's that say?
I can't really read it.
Why not? Is it upside down?
Yes.
Shouldn't be.
I think it is. Vietnam War. Better.
Oh.
See, the Vietnam War is fresh in my head.
Yeah.
And it was more than, I got out of the military almost 50 years ago. So the difference between the Civil War and the statute that they passed is half the time between my getting out and today. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I would look at that, and that's not that long ago. They were looking at that, they came about with the amendments after the war. And I don't know how, I think they teach history all wrong. I'm a Civil War buff. You want to know something about the Civil War? Ask me. More people died in the Civil War than World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam put together. More Americans. Do you realize that? I mean, over 500,000 people died. And some of them, it's really kind of 50-50. They passed the statutes the Louisiana statute, they passed it thinking that they were conforming to the United States Constitution, but doing what they wanted to do anyway. And we have that problem here in Oklahoma every single day the legislature's in session. They want to pass laws because somebody thinks it's a good idea. And we don't have enough lawyers in the legislature, frankly. There's 149, and there's less than 10% are lawyers.
So you think that even though they were looking at the 13th and 14th Amendment, they were like still going back and kind of doing whatever they...
You picked up on what my answer is.
Okay. If you're aware, I'm sure that you're aware of the racial tensions that were going on during that time era, and it was quite obvious that many judges, senators, and politicians were oblivious in knowing that they were ruining the lives of minorities. Do you think that this cycle is repeating itself, particularly with the new president?
Who wrote that question? Did you do that yourself? Good question. I think lots of people, I have a saying that my wife always quotes me on. Some people live and learn, and other people just live. Lots of people don't learn anything. And I don't know whether this president sees himself as, he certainly sees himself as undoing some things. And I think he thinks he's being responsive to some of the people who voted for him. But lots of the tensions that have manifested themselves, I'll be looking outside.
That's our math teacher trying to make us smile.
He's right there.
There he is.
Lots of the tensions that have come about were there before this president got there. And I certainly hope that we have learned enough to not repeat the same mistakes, but I do see a lot of that.
Do you think that the new president is aware and understanding of the Constitution?
God, why don't you just put me on the spot? You know, I went to college. I got a master's degree. I actually taught in college for several years. I got a master's degree, and then I worked on my doctorate degree. And then I decided I didn't want to teach. I wanted to do something else. So I went back and got a law degree. So I actually have spent more time in college classes than most people. I don't think the president has spent near as much time trying to understand what the law and the Constitution and our overall concept of what our country is supposed to be. I don't think he spent near as much time as he should have.
So.
But thank you for asking a political question.
Well, it's quite clear that systematic racism played a role in this case. Do you still think that that's a problem facing our country?
Yes, in a more I want to use the word insidious, in a more subtle way. They were much more blatant about it, and I think it's still there. I think people are just because it's not as blatant as it was. I think people are less aware of it.
Do you respect what Plessy did?
Yes, absolutely. That was easy.
Why?
Give me some, because it takes guts to stand up to somebody.
Would you ever do the same thing?
Would I?
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd have the courage. I would like to think I did, but I don't know that I would. It's, hey, people talk about you guys and peer pressure. You kidding me? You go through peer pressure your whole life.
And you're a judge, so it puts more pressure on you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, really what you guys don't realize, do you realize every time I make a decision, there's a likelihood that somebody someplace is gonna look over my shoulder and say, hey, you did the wrong thing.
Yeah.
All the time. And actually, taking that in mind with, I think it was your question, one of you all asked me, you did. What would, if I was the judge, Ferguson, what would I have done? That's why I think he's sitting there and everybody's looking at him and he's like, well, if I don't do this, I'm gonna be in a mess. Everybody's gonna think I'm stupid and not backing up the legislature, and I better do this.
Yeah. People would judge him in any way that he goes.
That's correct. No matter what decision he made, somebody's
If you
gonna.
prove him guilty or not guilty, that's still in it.
Do you think a certain law or amendment's being targeted right now?
Do you have something specific in mind?
Let's say, for example, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms.
Oh, God, yeah, there's a lot of people that, and I'm not sure, my reading of it's different, and my interpretation of it is different. Now, mind you, I went to law school 40 years ago. So my constitutional law class, we dealt with the Second Amendment totally different. The law is evolving, just like society, all the time. So.
Now, as you know, things like the, Ms. Million will probably think, things like the women's marches and things like this, the freedom to protest, I guess you can say, and many has critiqued them for it. Do you think that the First Amendment's being targeted?
No, I don't. I think people, that's another one of those things where people are critical no matter what you do. And I think they're merely exercising their right under the First Amendment to assemble. And I don't have any problem with that at all. I mean, if you're married to someone who's going to protest, I hate to say this, guys, but I mean, it's like, don't you have to go to work today? I mean, we've got to eat and we've got to keep a roof over our head. Don't you think you need to work today? There's some of that going on. But I mean, if you can do it without causing your family a problem, no.
So something happened yesterday about how immigrants didn't go to work or anything. Do you think that they should have done that?
The whole purpose of that was to demonstrate in a tangible way how much we rely on immigrants. And I have no idea whether that's actually going to be successful or not. Do we have a problem?
Me and her have to leave because we have to get on the bus.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we can
So thank you for your time. I guess this wraps up our
Wait, I have one more question.
one more question. Okay.
How often are
Thank
civil
you.
rights cases like brought to your attention?
Are you done with this, Cameron?
No, we're still interviewing. They have to go for the bus.
Okay. Hope
Said
I'm
Miss
not
Million would
interrupting.
probably take them home.
I
I mean,
need-
to the high school.
Pardon?
Said Miss Million would probably take them to the high school, but
Take who to the high
the
school?
ladies, Miss Million said that she would if we didn't finish, but
The bus is right there.
yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you the question again,
Thank
just so,
you.
just
Thank
for
you.
the-
You guys are so good.
So how often are civil rights cases brought to your attention?
The law is divided into two broad categories, civil cases and criminal cases. me being a state judge, in criminal cases, virtually every criminal case, some civil right, federal or state, our Constitution, the longest Constitution of any state in the United States. Didn't know that, did you?
No.
The longest Constitution basically mimics the federal Constitution, but then adds more to it. Virtually every criminal case has some implication with state or federal civil rights. But the kind involved, well, I started to say the kind involved in Plessy, but they're all kind of like that. I mean, did the police overreach? Did the police violate my civil rights by making me talk when I didn't want to talk? And just this week, I've looked at a video of a guy who was interviewed by the police, and I had to, at the end of the video, say, yes, his rights were violated, or no, they weren't. And when you look at it, you have to go, really? Did he know what he was doing? I mean, he was a little reluctant. He really kind of didn't want to talk, but nobody was doing anything to him before, during, or after that made him do it. You know, and you have to look at the big picture. But lots of stuff, First Amendment rights to assemble, do things like that. I don't see a lot of those, but I sure do see a lot of the other stuff in criminal cases.
All right. You have some really good answers.
I hope so.
Thank you so much.
So I actually can impress somebody at AR that I actually gave a good answer.
Yes.
Okay. You guys actually asked some really great questions. I'm very impressed with you guys.
Thank you.
You did some homework, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot.
Did you read the whole Plessy case?
We did.
Did you? I think did you read Judge Harlan's dissent?
No.
You need to read Judge Harlan's dissent because
I saw it on Wikipedia, but we couldn't use it as a source, so I didn't read very much of it. But I just saw like the dissenting opinion on there.
And I have, and by the way, I've been appealed on all kinds of stuff. In criminal cases, so far, never been reversed. On civil cases, I've been reversed a few times. But remember, civil case, basically property and money and stuff like that. Criminal case, freedom. So I feel good that they thought I was right in whatever they complained about. They said, no, he's right when he did that.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank
for
you.
letting us question you. Thanks.
And you know what? I am so proud of you guys. No, really. I didn't expect, he didn't tell me enough. He just came and said, hey, we want to interview you for this. And I'm real proud with the way you guys handled yourself.
Thank you for your time.
Very good. Keep up the good work, and if I can ever do anything for you, now I may not remember your names, but I'll remember it today. If you need